I have been a medic for a long time, and I have worked beside a lot of surgeons, and only one of them ever made me understand that steadiness is its own kind of courage. The quiet surgeon, they said, had no business at the front. She came forward to our aid station during a hard push, a slight, soft-spoken woman who did not fill a room the way some surgeons do. The senior ones tended to be large personalities, loud and certain, and she was the opposite, careful, precise, economical with her words, the kind of person you could overlook in a briefing. And overlook her they did. There was a colonel and a couple of the louder surgeons who said openly that a forward aid station in the thick of it was no place for someone like her, that she belonged in a clean rear hospital with good light and no shelling, that when the chaos came and the wounded poured in and the ground shook, she would freeze or fall apart or worse. The front, they said, was no place for the quiet surgeon. She heard them. She set up her instruments, checked her supplies, and said nothing. I had my own doubts, I'm ashamed to say. I had seen people fold under the particular hell of a forward aid station, and her stillness read to me as fragility. I figured I would be picking up her slack when it got bad. It got bad on the third day. The push met fierce resistance, and the wounded came back to us in a flood, more than we had beds for, more than we had hands for, a tide of broken men that would have overwhelmed any aid station. And then, as if that were not enough, the enemy began to range our position. The first shells fell close, then closer. The ground heaved, dust came down from the canvas overhead, and the unmistakable, world-ending sound of incoming filled the air, and the aid station, which was supposed to be a place of relative safety, became a place under direct fire with 40 wounded men inside it who could not be moved. I watched in that first terrible minute to see who would break, and I saw the quiet surgeon do the most extraordinary thing. She did not look up. She was elbow-deep in a man's abdomen when the shelling started, working to stop a bleed that was killing him, and she simply kept working. A shell fell close enough to shower us with dirt, and she did not flinch, did not pause, did not lift her eyes from the wound. She finished what she was doing, saved that man, and moved to the next and the next, in a steady, unhurried rhythm that did not change no matter what fell outside. And the strange thing, the thing I will never forget, is that her steadiness spread. The aid station had been on the edge of panic, the staff flinching with every impact, and she did not order anyone to be calm. She simply was calm, so completely and so obviously that the rest of us found our hands steadying to match hers. You cannot fake that. Men know the difference between performed calm and the real thing, and hers was bone-deep real. She ran that aid station through hours of shelling without ever once losing her composure. She triaged the flood of wounded with a cold, fast clarity that saved lives by itself, deciding in seconds who could wait and who could not, never freezing over the impossible choices, never letting the volume break her rhythm. She operated through impacts that had the rest of us ducking. When a near hit collapsed part of our shelter and brought down equipment and started a fire, she directed the response without stopping her work, got her patients moved and the fire out and the operating going again, all in the same level voice, and went back to the wound in front of her. She did not waste a motion, she did not waste a breath, she just kept saving men, one after another, while the world came apart around the canvas walls. There was one case I will carry to my grave. A young soldier came in with a wound to the chest that was filling his lung, drowning him, the kind of injury where minutes are everything and a single fumble means a dead boy. He came in just as a barrage walked across our position, the closest of the day, the canvas snapping and the lamps swinging and dirt sifting down into everything. I braced for her to lose him. Anyone would have in that noise with the ground jumping. She did not even seem to hear it. She found the wound, made her decision, and put a tube where it needed to go with a steadiness I could not have managed on a quiet day in a clean hospital, and the boy took a breath, a real breath, his first in minutes, and lived. She did it in the middle of a barrage, as calmly as if she were demonstrating the procedure to students. I have thought about it 10,000 times. The shells were trying to kill all of us, and she simply refused to let them into the small circle of light where her hands were saving a life. 40 wounded came into that aid station during the worst of it. 40 went out alive, under direct fire, with shells falling on the position and the staff at the edge of breaking. The quiet surgeon held that place together by the sheer steadiness of her hands and her voice, and not one man died on her table who could have been saved. The colonel who had said the front was no place for her was, as it happened, brought in wounded himself in the middle of it, and she operated on him through the shelling with the same calm she gave everyone, and saved his life, and never said a word about it. When it finally ended, when the guns fell silent and the dust settled and the surviving wounded had been stabilized and moved, the aid station was a wreck, and the staff were hollow-eyed and shaking with the aftermath, and she was still moving among the cots, checking her patients, her scrubs soaked dark, and her hands finally allowed to tremble now that the work was done. And the colonel, lying on a litter with his life in his chest because of her, looked at her across that ruined tent, and he could not speak, and he did not have to. Everyone in that aid station had seen it. Everyone knew what she had done. No one ever again said the front was no place for the quiet surgeon. The word simply died permanently that day. I learned afterward, what the loud ones had never bothered to learn, that she had chosen forward work on purpose, that she had trained herself for exactly the kind of hell we had just lived through, that her quietness was not the absence of nerve, but the product of a discipline so complete that the chaos could not touch it. She had let them doubt her because arguing was a poor use of energy she would rather spend on her patients. The shelling, she knew, would settle the question, and it had. I asked her weeks later how she did it, how she kept her hands still while the shells fell. She considered the question for a long moment, the way she considered everything, and then she said that the wound in front of her was the only thing she could actually do anything about, so it was the only thing she let herself think about. The shelling was not hers to solve, she said, but the bleeding was, and a surgeon who lets the thing she cannot control pull her hands off the thing she can is no use to anyone. I'm not braver than the rest of you, she told me. I've just decided where my attention belongs, and I don't let the noise move it. I have never heard a better description of what courage actually is. I have worked a lot of hard days since, and I have tried to carry her steadiness into every one of them. When the wounded flood in and the ground shakes and the young medics start to flinch, I think of her elbow deep in a wound while the shells fell, not lifting her eyes, and I make my own hands steady, and the steadiness spreads, the way hers did. Is the best thing I know how to do, and I learned it from her. I tell the new ones about the quiet surgeon. I make sure they hear the part about the colonel and the loud surgeons first, the part where everyone agreed the front was no place for her. And then I tell them about the third day, the flood of wounded, the shells on the position, and the slight, soft-spoken woman who operated through all of it and brought 40 men out alive without ever once raising her voice. And I tell them the thing she taught me without ever meaning to teach it, that the loudest person in the room is rarely the steadiest, that real courage often looks like nothing more than a pair of hands that refuse to shake, and that the quiet one they're so sure will break may be the only thing holding the whole place together when the worst finally comes.